I look at entrepreneurs. I have a guy right now. He's 23 years old. He's running a $1 million a year business. I said, what happens if you just run that overseas until you're 30? And you're able to save $400,000, you're putting that back into the Facebook ads, you're putting that back into the business, over the next 7 years. That's generational wealth.
Gotcha. And life is a lot about who you know, and that's a super valuable asset to have. Just to have those connections of people that are gonna, treat you well.
It's different overseas, right? Because there's no Zillow in most other countries. There's a great website in Serbia someone developed. Maybe they're a fan of ours because I've been saying this is the idea. Start a real estate website. There's a website in Serbia called City Expert. It's the most beautiful real estate website you've seen outside of the U.S. There's some sites in Malaysia, but even the countries like Malaysia that are more developed. You have a lot of kind of scammy or inaccurate listings. And so the kind of data that you have in the Western world simply doesn't exist in these other countries. It's a great opportunity for a lot of investors or entrepreneurs, but it also means that you need to know what you're doing.
Right.
So you do need to know people.
Heads up to any data scientists who are listening who want to, hey, we may want to get you connected with Mr. Henderson here. Might have some investment opportunities for real estate websites in other countries. Is that you think that'd be hot?
I think it's an incredible opportunity. I've been talking for years about the country of Georgia, for example, and you can go and buy a property. There's no property taxes for people who don't live there. It costs $17 to transfer a title. It's one of the most free countries for protecting property rights. The sixth easiest country in the world to do business now, thanks to President Mikhail Saakashvili, who started this. He's speaking at a live event we're having next year. We've kind of become buddies in a sense. And he totally revolutionized the place, and nobody's ever heard of it. And so the culture has yet to catch up with the fact that they have all these investors coming. I've had numerous people, hundreds of people probably, write me, stop me in the street, whatever. I came to buy a property. And yet it's so opaque. And if someone only started a website that made it easy, a fraction of Zillow, that person would have an incredible business.
Yeah. Hey, just for the record, I do know something about Georgia. They have a great rugby team, so I do know.
I guess they do. And a good the Olympics, it's always the wrestlers, I think.
Then they have great wrestlers too. That's exactly right. Yeah.
We're kind of splitting hairs here between rugby and wrestlers. They got the same body type.
It's very similar.
Real quick before we move on too, because this is like just super interesting. This is something that we have said a few times in past episodes, and it's nothing that we came up with. It's something that is repeated by many of our guests, which is, if you want to grow your wealth, protecting it first, being tax smart second, and then knowing where to put it third is kind of the hierarchy of needs. And so often I think where people get backwards is they're trying to just look at like, hey, where can I go put money and make it grow? And they're not thinking like, hey, an 8% taxable growth is not near as sexy as 20% tax savings. Right. And so, it seems like you're doing this on a global scale where you're like, hey, we got to protect what you have. Stop. It's tough to re-earn $1. Then let's be tax smart. And now let's go see where you should be putting, where you should be diversifying your money.
Well, there's a couple things that come to mind. I remember there is definitely a mindset shift when you do this. I don't make decisions based on how do I get money off my books. I make smart business decisions, and I'm very proud. We invest in, we're going to have about 30 team members at the end of this year. Paying wages that maybe aren't, amazing wages in the U.S., but I can tell you are more than amazing where these people live, and they're thrilled, and we retain people, and it's been a great process. And so I'm really proud of operating people in some of those places, opportunities where in some cases unemployment rates are much higher. But I can tell you I'm making business decisions not based on how do I jam in some marketing on December 31st to write it off. And that's a paradigm shift of going. Because I hear so many people who their business keeps growing too quickly and they eventually run out of steam and they kind of give up because they run out of deductions to stop the high tax rates from creeping up on them as the business grows 50 or 100% year over year. And so I think that a paradigm shift is in order. In terms of tax savings, if you look at doubling a penny every day, and you do that, today it's a penny, tomorrow it's 2 cents. After a month, it's something like $5.3 million. If you take out a 30% withholding tax, it's somewhere in the mid 5 figures.
Yeah.
And so I look at that, and I look at entrepreneurs. I have a guy right now, he's 23 years old. He's running a $1 million a year business. I said, what happens if you just run that overseas until you're 30? And you're able to save $400,000. You're putting that back into the Facebook ads. You're putting that back into the business. Over the next 7 years, that's generational wealth. That's potentially tens of millions of dollars by 30. And it just goes to show all these people that think they should take 40 or 50% of your wealth. I don't think these people would be calling me if the tax rate was Montenegro, 9%.
Yep.
If you're making $10 million and they're taking $1 million, okay, maybe you're interested in doing something. But by and large, I think a lot of people realize, we're willing to pay for something, but it's become so egregious. That people are saying, 58% is an entrepreneur in California, I'm out.
Yeah, it's hard. Absolutely. Yeah, those dollars are hard enough to make.
Yeah,
no kidding. Remake them the tax. So,
and not even to get a thank you. I mean, the culture in the Western world today is so anti-wealth, and you're a villain. And I've had more calls than ever before from people who say, I just don't feel like I'm needed. I don't feel like I'm wanted. I feel like I am the enemy. And I don't want to hire 30 of those people. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, because also you got to deal with the employees that are just like, well, I mean, he's the business owner. He clearly is flush with cash. He should just give me a raise. I mean, I'm worth it, right? I mean, there's also that kind of mentality too.
Obviously, that exists everywhere, but at least it's not. There's different cultures, and it's not this visceral hatred that you have in where I'm from.
Yeah. So about that paradigm shift, change is kind of scary, right, for a lot of people, and changing how they do things. So what's probably the scariest thing for people to switch over to the nomad capitalist way?
Well, I mean, the first thing with the nomad capitalist way, you don't have to necessarily move. I've had a lot of people who are concerned with the direction of the country, and they're saying, you know what, let me get a second passport in a low-tax country like in Antigua, for example, where you can just invest and you don't even have to go there. And so that's my plan B. It's my backup plan. It's my escape hatch. You can do that, and you can open a bank account somewhere else, and you can make some investments somewhere else, and you can move your IRA overseas without leaving home, and you're still putting yourself substantially above everybody else. I don't know when the last time a bank in Singapore failed, but it was a lot before the last time a bank in the U.S. failed. So you're really not going to hurt yourself by simply taking some diversification measures. But the hardest thing, if you're actually moving overseas and getting the full tax savings as a business owner, is, of course, understanding the idea that the place that you're from is not the be-all and the end-all, and it's not number one in everything, let alone possibly anything. If you look at the statistics on just the United States, for example, during the Great Recession, which is when you would think you'd want financial security, banks in the U.S., by one account, came in at the 40th safest in the world. I don't know how many Americans can name 39 other countries, let alone 39 others with safer banks. And so, that's kind of shocking, right? U.S. passport. We have the Nomad Passport Index. We put it every year. It's been in Bloomberg and CNN and all over the place. We ranked the U.S. passport, I believe, 37th. Now, there's 200, so it's not like the worst. It's not Iran, but there's a lot of passports that are better. Romania. A lot of passports that people would laugh at. I remember turning on CNBC, years ago, and they were talking about how they wanted to raise the price for the U.S. green card program through EB-5. And they were laughing how Malta was more expensive. Malta charges more. First of all, Malta gives you instant citizenship. You don't have to live there and turn over your entire financial life to the IRS for 5 years and have them snoop in every bank account you have anywhere in the world. Malta just gives you the citizenship for the higher price. But Malta's in the European Union. You can live and work anywhere. If you leave Malta, they don't tax you. They don't care what you're doing. And this idea that where you're from is somehow better than everybody else is something that people in the Western world have. And yet I go around to all these emerging world countries, and they are really cleaning up. Malaysia, where I spend some time, has an objective by 2030 to be at the same standard of wealth as any European country. And quite frankly, they're already beating a lot of countries in the European Union in terms of things like GDP per capita. So the countries that people are just working hard and not obsessing over their image. And I think if you're in a country where they are obsessing over their image and you've bought into the Kool-Aid, that's going to make it very difficult. I think once you clear through that, you will realize, you know what? Living in Mexico City is pretty nice. And it's relatively safe in the right neighborhoods. And you'll start to make these realizations.
It sounds a little crazy, though, Andrew. I mean, you're telling me that if you leave people alone, give them freedom, and don't overtax them, and just let them grow and work hard, and let the entrepreneurial spirit, just rise. That people can handle themselves. That seems a lot outlandish to me. I don't know. I don't know if I'm buying that.
Well, I mean, the masses, they certainly like to do that. I mean, the crabs in a bucket philosophy works everywhere, but I think you have to get past that if you want to really achieve something. And, I talk about, again, let's keep on the topic of Malaysia. I see so many, I'll make a video on what happens if Joe Biden gets elected on YouTube, or I'll make a video about Joe Biden's tax plan, and I'll make one comment about how, your life's not going to really change that much, let's be honest, whoever's president. That's an entrepreneurial thought, right? You're in charge. You dictate. Okay, your taxes are going to be higher. No doubt, I'm here, I'm with you. They're going to be higher anyway eventually, don't worry. But all the Trump voters then come out, the Fox News crowd, I have nothing against these people, but they come out and I'm a communist suddenly. I mean, the name of the channel is Nomad Capitalist. He's a communist. I know what he's up to. And this is a culture that, even the people that are supposed to be on your side, you can't get along with. And
I mean, you're Ohio born and raised. I mean, you turned your back against the Midwest of America.
Well, I'm a traitor, yeah.
Well, Andrew, I think somebody did try and start the Nomad Communist website and service. That just didn't work very well. They tried, and it just wasn't a go.
We did that on April 1st, the Nomad Communist.
Maybe because they had a place where you could pay money, but then they never sent you anything, and so eventually you started paying.
I mean, so where were we? I mean, I just look at, you've got to get past this idea that people talk about in Malaysia, for example. They're extreme. Somebody said, I don't like it because you can't buy alcohol and you can't share a hotel room with your girlfriend. I said, I just walked outside. I said, there are girls with everything hanging out, and I just bought a bottle of Macallan. So this is just ridiculous. And this is what people think, and this is how they justify to themselves. The level of freedom, I had American guy, moved down from California to Mexico. He's been there about 5 years. He said, there's not really the same constitution here. There's not this, there's not that. He said, but the feeling, the reality, the day-to-day is you are more free. You're certainly more free in many of these countries from a tax perspective. They're much less confiscatory. They're not trying to invent more ways. I talked about the country of Georgia. When Mikhail Saakashvili, our friend, came in and he slashed taxes, the number of taxes from 21 to 6, then to 5. He flattened pretty much all of them or put very narrow bands, some of the lowest tax rates you'll find. And he made it so where you had to have a constitutional amendment to change some of them. And so that's not happening in the Western world. And yet people want to act it because they have a constitution that nobody follows, that somehow that's freedom. Politicians are politicians. And I think you want to go where the real freedom is. And going back to the financial point of view, if you are a successful business owner, I promise you can find a place that's just as free that will let you keep a lot more of your money. And by the way, the roads will be have you been to Dubai and driven on the roads? They're impeccable. Any of these places, even the Georgias of the world, even parts of Ukraine, even countries that are just not doing that well have said, we're going to make an investment in nice airports, nice roads. My last time I was in the US, I was in JFK. The place is collapsing.
Yeah. It's not a great airport. I've flown out there many times. It is not an amazing airport.
So kind of back to your search. So I guess if someone comes to you with a clean slate, what's your initial process for just finding because obviously you're not just gonna do like a one size fits all, to anyone who calls you up. What's your first initial question when you're asking people just to get to know you questions and finding a direction for them?
Well, the first question is basically just what brings you in. I like to hear from people and just go through a whole just listen and just active listening, and people say things and you pick up on it. And I think that what I like about your show, and obviously you look at a lot of these podcasts, for example, it's just like a list of questions. And it's like, so where did you get your start in life? It's like, well, I murdered my neighbor when I was 11 years old and I disposed of, and they're like, all right, question number 2. And it's like, No, you have to go with the flow. And so there's not really a list of questions to start. It's what are you trying to accomplish? And then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, let's set 3 macro goals. And then, okay, let's poke and let's prod against those a little bit. It's kind of like a doctor, get on the table, take off your clothes, and I'm going to start poking at things and seeing where it hurts and seeing, where we go from there. What are the 3 macro goals? And then from there, we've got a repository. We've saved probably 600 different questions that we'll pull out, and we will adapt, and we'll switch up, and sometimes we'll add additional questions to that. And so I might ask you 200 questions over the course of a whole engagement. My philosophy on this is, I was talking to guys who are in the citizenship by investment business recently. This is the Antigua example. You donate money to their country, you get a passport. You don't need to live there, you don't need to go there, you don't need to pay taxes, you don't need to do anything. They are small islands. And for $100,000, you can be a citizen in 6 months. It's called citizenship by investment. There's a whole business of these guys that mostly serve non-Westerners who want better travel documents. Whereas I'm helping people get second passports to potentially bail from their countries when the taxes get too high. They're doing it to Chinese or Russians or whatever. And basically you go into most of their offices and it is, here's 6 countries we sell, which one do you want? And it's so disingenuous to me because I had a guy recently who, he wanted to renounce his U.S. citizenship, but he thought his wife had to also. I said, no, she doesn't. She breathed a sigh of relief. And then I said, okay, well, now we can go to the cheaper citizenship by investment. So we already saved you 30 grand. And then I said, well, let's go through a whole thing. Turns out his mother is from an Asian country. He can get citizenship there. He may not have to pay any money at all because he wants to live in Asia. So the Asian passport works very well for what he wants to do. And, $130,000 saved by going through all these questions about citizenship, about his U.S. taxes, about all these different things. And that's the point. It all has to work together. And I think that so many things there's a lawyer in Panama. I can tell you, he ain't recommending that you incorporate in Malta. And I think that far too many people, they're always looking for what's the best? There is no best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Because the rules are always changing. Life's always changing.
Well, that too.
Always changing. Yeah. So
and I think, if I may, I think what you want to understand, by the way, is you want to compartmentalize. Okay. So people will come to me and say, here's the biggest misconception. Andrew, you said you love Georgia, so start a company there. No. I said you can open a bank account there pretty easily, even as an American, as a tourist. I think there's opportunities in the market. I think it's an interesting place to live. They have nice food, nice wine. It's not good for everything. And so I think people, they're looking for, much like my father, who debated the idea of moving from the United States to New Zealand about 25 years ago. Back then it was back up the truck, sell everything we own, move it to New Zealand, we're starting a whole new life. Now it's, I'm going to live here, my company's going to be here, my banks are going to be here, here, and here, my customers are over here. And I think that what you don't want to do is condition yourself that you're looking for one new place. You're looking for a series of places that each offer the best. No one place is the best for anything. Singapore, for example, for me, overpriced, don't really want to live there. Not exactly my cup of tea as a place to live. Great place if you want your money stored and you want it to be rock solid. So put your money there and then go live somewhere else.
So do you guys also help with because obviously finding a good solution for people is one thing, but actually carrying it out is a whole other. There's a lot of moving parts there, right? So do you guys take it the one step further and say, hey, we're going to find the right fit for you, but we're also going to help you get all of these pieces in place and at least teach you how to use them together before we kind of set you off into the wild?
Yeah, we've been improving that over the years. I think now we're pretty good at it. I think now we're really good at it. We've got to where we're, number one, we spent about a month creating a plan with someone through a series of different phone calls. I've brought in some of my senior team members now because I have some really smart people on the team, and they'll step in. Most of my senior team members are actually women, so it kind of works to kind of give a different perspective, and people share different information with them that they might not share with me, and so we've really found that that's a nice balance. So we'll spend about a month creating the plan over 5-6 phone calls and some emails back and forth. From there, obviously, you do want to execute it. I'm a big believer in execution. What I've tried to do is basically say, all right, we'll walk with you for a year. It's not going to take a year to do it unless you're slow and helping me with some stuff, signing documents, whatever. We'll try and handle as much of the paperwork collection and that for you. And then as we go, if there's questions about, well, hold on, this banker asked me a question, what do I say? Then we'll work through that with you. Obviously, there's no perfect system. What I tell everyone to expect is a few hiccups. Most of the hiccups that we see are pretty expected from my perspective. But I understand that when people are first going out and doing it, it can be really weird to have a bank ask you some questions. Because if you're used to the Chase Bank, in Tempe, Arizona, then they don't. It's a different perspective when you go somewhere else. It's not better. It's not worse. I mean, it is better, I think, but it's just different. And so that's what we do. So it is execution, and I've spent really 13 years going all around finding people who are good, finding people who aren't so good, finding people who are good for certain things but not others, and plugging that in. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.